Hello YouTube, I do apologize for the poor quality of video, but as of right now this is what's going to stand in as my video for worst to best Pokemon series, so why don't we go ahead and jump right into it. Starting off at the bottom is actually Pokemon Journeys. Now I'm not considering Pokemon Master Journeys as of yet, since that part of it is still going. But probably what I hate most with Pokemon Journeys would have to be the fact that it's taking the mechanics of Pokemon Go and putting it into the anime series. And by that I mean things such as not having to weaken Pokemon in order to catch them, which made the whole thing with Go a bit monotonous as he caught Pokemon left and right. And honestly, if ever they were wanting to try and get rid of Ash for a new protagonist, I think that using Go with his dream of just wanting to catch Pokemon and not really battle would be a bit hard to follow as a series, as it would become very boring to me, in my opinion. I also do find that they are underutilizing the Pokemon Coronation to where the battles of that are few and far between. And so that not even that really seems to kind of amp it up really. And so I feel as though this has kind of gotten lost in as a series. Taking the next spot would actually be the Pokemon Black and White series, which the only reason that even stands above Journeys is due to it keeping with the original Pokemon mechanics. Other than that, there was too much that really went wrong with this. Starting off with the battle between Ash and his supposed rival Trip, who wasn't really even much of a rival. And honestly, I think they had better characters within that series that definitely seem more like rivals than Trip. But let's just start off with the fact of Pikachu losing to a beginning level Snivy just because he couldn't use his electricity. Not like he didn't have moves like Quick Attack and Iron Tail to compensate, but I guess they had to find some way to make it seem like Ash was new at this, which also really bothered me, was the fact that Ash had went through so many regions before this, and now all of a sudden it's like he's never even done it before. So there was a lot that really, just straight from the beginning, already painted this as a bad series to me. Another part that I definitely didn't like was I wasn't much of a fan of Iris, and I also, while this might be a bit of an unpopular opinion, wasn't much of a fan of the Pokemon. Some of the Pokemon seemed a bit boring to me. And what I found to be very useless was these Pokemon clubs where they tried to do the whole Jenny and Joy clone thing with the head of the Pokemon clubs, and there was only like ever 2 even ever shown. I also thought that the whole idea behind Pokemon connoisseurs was extremely useless, because all it was just some person who told you what Pokemon you should have. So honestly, I feel there was just a lot of material that at this time I think they kind of were scraping the bottom of the barrel with a lot of it. So, getting off of that, we move on to Pokemon Battle Frontier, which, while technically is a part of the Pokemon Hoenn journeys, I'm considering it as its own, as it did stand in a way that it could have been its own. And I do like, actually, the fact that there was a lot of nostalgia to it, to where Ash was traveling to places that he had already been in Kanto. So for those of us who grew up with Pokemon, it was just a great nostalgia moment. Also, I did like the idea of the Frontier Brains. It was kind of a bit of a new idea, and especially in the end when Ash had to call in his original team minus Butterfree and Pidgeot to be able to defeat Brandon, it really started showing how Ash had grown and improved over the years. So the Frontier was a nice little nostalgia piece, really. Going up from that, another sub-series that I think is a bit underrated would be the Orange Island, which once again is more a part of the Kanto, but I still think that it should be considered its own series here, as it is that there was a lot of great things to it. I did enjoy the atmosphere of it, as well as there was a lot of new challenges with the 4 gyms that Ash went to in the Orange Islands. So I just thought that it kind of stood as a great little side story, even if it did also lead into the story of the GS Ball that eventually got forgotten. So moving up from there is actually Pokemon Advance, which is also the Hoenn region. At first, it took a little while for me to actually even get used to this, as I was at first not a fan of May and Max, but they kind of warmed up on me. Now, this also introduced Pokemon Contest, which, while might have been annoying for some people, kind of getting in the way of Pokemon gym battles, it was at least something new to the Pokemon franchise. And I did find a lot of that to at least be somewhat kind of more of an imaginable, a little bit more unique. Other than that, there wasn't really much else to say about that. So, move on to Johto. Now, Johto, as the 2nd gen Pokemon, I definitely enjoyed getting to see the start of new Pokemon, ones of which we had already started seeing within the Kanto. But the Johto, I feel like there was a lot to it. One being a kind of a full circle type thing to where Ash finally defeats Gary in the Johto League, and Gary actually has more respect for Ash. And it's kind of like a bittersweet ending for him as he decides to quit Pokemon training in order to become a Pokemon professor like his grandfather. And honestly, I feel as though Gary even grew throughout this. And also, I definitely also did enjoy getting to see things come full circle for Misty as well, to where she finally decided to accept her role as the gym leader in Cerulean City, as she went back after finally getting her newly fixed bike. So there was a lot of kind of loose ends being tied up, if you will. Plus, a lot of the gym battles itself were definitely pretty unique and fun, and it had some pretty great new Pokemon as well. Other than that, Sun and Moon is actually next after Johto, which I rank this a little higher for a few different reasons. First off, it was a lot like the Orange Islands, except kind of adding its own new spin to things. And by that, I mean its own kind of a lowland type league. First off, having the island challenges was a bit different, but also still a fun idea. The animation of it was something to get used to. But I did definitely enjoy a lot of Ash's, and actually not just him, but others who had very deep connections to each other. And in fact, I think this was probably where they had the most deepest connections and friendships in all of the series. And case in point, Ash with Professor Kukui, to where it was kind of like he was like an older brother to Ash that he never had. Or his rivalry with Kiawe or Gladion. It just seemed like everyone had a closeness that you hadn't really seen in other Pokemon series. Also, I thought the idea of taking Kanto Pokemon and doing a whole new version of them was a pretty unique idea. Not just that, but the Ultra Beasts as well. So the Sun and Moon actually brought in a lot of new unique ideas, which in many cases could have been considered pretty risky, but I think they made it work very well, especially with the idea of Z moves. So there was definitely a lot to actually appreciate that would give me reason to put it up this high, just outside the top 3, of course. And taking third spot would actually be the Diamond and Pearl, aka the Sinnoh region. Now, there was definitely a lot here that I quite enjoyed. First off, though, Paul, definitely a character that you really had to learn to get used to. But after a while, you see that he has a very intricate story, or a very intricate personality, I should say. One that really showed him as being really Ash's probably most perfect rival, actually. Not only that, although it was another one that had Pokemon contest, it was a bit different, in which got to even see Ash participate in a little bit, so it was showing him as he was kind of learning some new things himself. I also did like how some things got to be pretty new, like the swallowing of their own attacks to power them up. And even though this isn't seen in any other series afterwards, I thought it was unique and probably should make a comeback, really. And I did just like the story behind it. Like I said, Paul definitely seemed to be probably Ash's most perfect rival, who truly pushed him to his limits, as well as Ash doing the same for Paul. And especially because even though Paul was from the Sinnoh, he didn't actually start his journey there, so they put Paul on the same level as Ash, which I thought was definitely a really good idea as opposed to what they did with Black and White. And coming in second place would actually be the original Kanto. Of course, for those of us who grew up on Pokemon, we cannot ever forget getting to watch Ash as he just starts out. While it is that most of his badges during this time were pity badges, it was still something that you can say you grew up with him, kind of learning along with him. Plus, honestly, I think they had some of the best Pokemon in the original. And not only that, it was the start of Ash's longtime friendship with, of course, Pikachu. as well as getting to see our original team of Ash, Misty, and Brock. And of course, who can forget the start of his battles with Team Rocket? While they can be very inconvenient at many times, you still have to have those comedic relief characters. Honestly, I think Kanto having to have started the whole thing, it's just something to kind of stay within your heart, especially for if you completely grew up on it from the beginning. And taking first place is actually the XY and XYZ. Now, the reason as to why I put this on top is because I thought that a lot of the Pokemon in this area was very imaginative. Not to mention the idea of mega evolutions. While it is that a lot of people will say that they just stole from Digimon, let's be real, Digimon kind of stole from them first, so kind of just went around in a circle on that. But I really did like the idea of mega evolutions and being able to power up your Pokemon in that way. Even if it was only particular Pokemon that could even do it. Not only that, I do wish that they utilized the Pokemon Chateau a little bit, but that was another good idea, as well as the fact that even though Pokemon Showcase was just another version of the Pokemon contest, it was just done in a little bit of a different way. I don't think it got too much in the way of anything else. Plus, this probably had my favorite battle music, as well as the animation and fight scenes in this series. Plus the story behind Team Flare and what they were trying to do. I think it all just added up perfectly and worked very well together, which is why I think that this was my favorite of the series. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments which series you would put on top and which you didn't like so much, or if you may have agreed with my pickings. Also, be sure to like and subscribe. And again, I do apologize for the quality of this video, as I am still working to try and get that rectified. So until then, thank you and good night.